Live. Okay, welcome to TFB's as of yet untitled podcast. I'm Russell and Dolag, here with my two friends, Sammy Isaac from Chuk and Yusu Enaga from Chuk. So we're just going to be talking about certain issues. I think today's topic is kind of leaning towards immigration. So I'm going to hand it over to Sam to start our first topic.
All right, our first topic is coming out of Twin Falls, Idaho. The headline is Man charged with sexually assaulting 12-year-old pleads guilty to a lesser charge. So, a man was charged with sexually assaulting a disabled 12-year-old girl, and he has accepted a plea deal for a lesser charge. He, 22 years old, pled guilty on Friday to injury to a child. And the prosecutors will recommend he be sentenced to probation with the expectation that he will be deported. So I think the talk now goes to deportation. What do you guys think?
Well, I know back home there's like a big issue, especially in Chuk, with like crime rates like spiking big time, a lot of murders and rapes. And it has to do with that issue. Like, are these criminals there to begin with, or were they sent back from the U.S. or wherever they were?
That's a good point, because as it would appear from our previous interview with Judge Yamase and some other people who have talked to us in the past, there is a large spike in crime rates in Chuk, and the way that deportation works, well, what happens to people who get deported back home is they don't get on a list. There's no program. There's no process. They essentially get a free ticket home. And I think it's fair to say that many of these people being deported are not all bad, right? But then there are those who are pretty bad and they repeat their crimes that they committed abroad.
Some of these people get deported for like DUIs or some not as well. It's still a serious crime, but probably not as heinous as raping a 12-year-old kid.
I just wonder if deportation is always the answer to all these things.
Good point.
Actually, serving their sentence in the U.S. could be. I don't know. I don't know if that's a better idea, but
I could see like the U.S. like, why should we have to pay taxpayer money to rehabilitate these criminals or whatever?
That's a good point, because is it cheaper for a state to deport someone than to house them for 10 plus years?
I mean, like a $2,000 ticket is cheaper than feeding and clothing and taking care of a person for how many years?
Right, and we talked about it earlier off camera that getting deported requires a state or a country to want to deport a criminal, but it also requires the criminal's home country to accept the deportee. What do you guys think about that?
It's good you talk about that, because like, let's talk about the prison systems back home and our sentencing for major crimes too, and how we punish them, because there's some like not serial, but they're returning a lot of people. Like, I know someone in Pohnpei that has murdered people as soon as he got out, and they sent him back in. It's like, and I don't think we have the not just the facilities, but just the knowledge to like really rehabilitate these kind of people and how to contain them. And then there's no capital punishment, and I'm not talking just like murder, like death sentence, but like life sentence or longer sentences.
But now you raise another important issue. If someone commits a crime in one country, should they be punished for that crime in another country? So
should they just walk free?
Should they walk? That's the other question that Yusu raised. Like, should they just get away with it with a slap on the wrist and a plane ticket home? Right.
It's almost like a reward.
It almost seems like a reward, but I think I don't know, maybe the way to look at it would be that person can't leave their home country anymore. So that person is imprisoned in his or her home country.
Yeah, but when you say it that way, there's no guarantee that person will not commit the same crime being
Right.
back home, and could be a crime spree for that person if nothing's being done.
I mean, I know we talked to about Judge Yamase, saying like
Yeah.
the process or the lack thereof.
Right.
Like they're not even put on a list, like
I don't
a
think.
watch list.
Yeah, I think as of now they don't have.
Are
a
they even
list.
like put on probation when they get home?
I don't know.
So how is it that our country can accept these deportees and not do anything about it after that?
Mm.
There's like the oversight. Where's the how are they keeping the public safe?
There's something I don't know, but how do they know that the person was deported on the country, let's say FSM, when that person did come back? How do they know that person was deported, or they're just simply coming back home? Does it say somewhere? Like,
I don't know. There has to be a list somewhere because their country has to accept them back, as far as I know. So that list exists, but is it available to the public? I don't know. I don't think so. And we're not in at home right now, and we're not lawyers, we're not politicians, so we don't know how this works. But to the limit of our knowledge, this is all that we know. And many people at home don't know. If someone, like you're saying, if someone comes home, they're like, "Oh, this guy came back," right? But do they know that this guy came back because he committed a serious crime in another country? So is that important, or is it within our culture to forgive and forget?
There's certainly that aspect, especially like your family would know why
Mm,
your immediate family at least would know, and it is part of our culture to kind of like uh, fix these situations quietly.
right.
Like, how do you amend that if it's like thousands of miles apart?
It's true.
Because especially like in this situation, I don't know who was involved, but let's just say hypothetically, he was just living there alone, and then he did this crime. His family lives in wherever he's from. How did they travel all the way there to go apologize?
Mm,
I mean, I'm just as long as we're speaking about cultural stuff.
right. Yeah.
But yeah, getting back to them getting back home and doing stuff, I think there's certainly that aspect of our culture that they're watching him.
That's true. Yeah. Smaller community,
Yeah,
more close knit.
but as for dealing with if they do have problems,
Mm.
that's one thing I think we really lack back home. It's like,
Mm.
especially like with mental issues or
Facilities and
Yeah.
institutions. Yeah. It's good that you brought that up because we mentioned briefly that there has been a spike in crimes. There is no official record of that. This is just something that
you just
trusted people from home have been telling us.
Yeah.
Right. So we can't prove that, but it's been the public discourse is there is more crime going on than there used to be 10, 20 years ago. Anything else?
I don't know. Unless somebody out there wants to add, please let us know your thoughts on this stuff. Maybe we'll just move on to our next topic, which coincidentally is about people back home, but this time coming back out. Uh, Recently, there's been a lot of emigration with the E out of FSM and the Marshalls and Palau, and just the whole region, coming out to Hawaii and other places in the mainland. So the topic is just that whole immigration, how it is now, and kind of like projecting how it's going to be in the future. So we were talking beforehand about just in Hawaii, there's so many Micronesians here, and all this stuff that's going on, like just portraying us negatively in the media and this homeless stuff. But I'm kind of thinking in the future there's gonna be a big spike, especially due to the climate changes. His thoughts about that?
I think the issue of immigration is something that's has been happening for the past 10 years. I know recent statistics have come out that Chuk has a negative growth. There are more people leaving Chuk than there are people going to Chuk or being born in Chuk. So that's certainly an issue for Chuk, and it leads to other issues such as lack of workforce, lack of people like actually being there, right? So that is a problem, and that speaks to the issue of poverty or the issue of not having enough jobs, not having enough money, opportunities. And we can't blame many people for leaving their countries because they need to advance themselves. They need to find better opportunities for themselves and for their children. So it certainly is a current issue. But as you mentioned climate change, right? That's a much bigger issue. You told me before that there might be some kind of a domino effect with people in our islands having to leave because of uninhabitable conditions. Then they move to proper islands or main islands, and then there will be maybe overpopulation there or lack of resources in that way, and then they'll have to leave to another place. So it'll just keep going. So certainly, from what it looks like, there will be more migration out
Right.
of the region.
Were you gonna say
Yeah.
something?
I mean, as far as going along the climate change part, it's already there's already been people planning a huge migration, say in the Marshall Islands, the Bikinians who are on the Killer Islands, their islands are pretty much submerged, and they're looking for ways to get everyone out, and that's like happening this very moment. So in next 10 years, who knows? And there's gonna be a lot more people leaving back home.
I think just adding like 100 people, that's a huge disruption. And there's more than 100 people in these other islands, way more.
And are we gonna be considered refugees, as a lot of people like to say, climate
Right.
refugees?
I'm glad you bring that up because that really talks about our status as migrants here in the US because we can just be residents. So we would have an actual status, but at the same time, some of us will be climate refugees without the refugee status, if you will.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up because very recently there was a man from Kiribati,
Right.
New Zealand, or was it Australia? New Zealand?
I think he was in New Zealand.
Okay, so he tried to claim the status of climate refugee, the very first, and they did not grant that to him. So he had to be deported back to Kiribati, right? So as of this moment, there are people who are experiencing climate change that requires them or compels them to leave their home islands, right? Because they can't live there anymore. But host countries or other countries where they're leaving to don't want to recognize them as climate refugees. They don't see that as a good reason to be a refugee. So when will that be? When we actually have statistics that show people are dying, or that we can prove that an island has completely disappeared?
Like how many feet underwater does the island have to be?
Yeah. So how much of the island has to be destroyed before you can claim refugee status? So that's an impending problem that we have to look at. And it's a very
If people are looking for lawyer jobs in the future, are gonna need immigrant lawyers and ocean law.
Yes, like Russell.
Yeah, we're not lawyers.
I guess refugees, like especially now was it the Russian country area with all that people running back and forth, the whole idea of refugees starting to shift in a very negative way.
Yes,
That's a good
Europe's
point.
refugee situation with the
Syria.
Syrians. Yeah, it's very sad, but it's kind of I don't know. When I see the story, I'm just kind of thinking that's gonna be our people in a couple years, and nobody's gonna want us.
Because you're looking at that and the Syria, Europe refugee status, those billions of people
Yeah.
going to dozens of countries.
Right.
But for us, it's hundreds or thousands of people going to a few countries as well. So we can look at what's going on now in the world and try to see if that will be, it'll set a precedent of
Right.
how larger countries can or will or won't accept refugees. And even something as serious as genocide or war, some countries are
Are
very
blocking,
reluctant, right?
closing up.
Yeah, so that's something that you can see visibly, right? But something like climate change, something that you can't actually see, it's not as tangible as war. Will host countries be more willing or more open to accept people to something that they can't really see or experience and understand? So that's another issue
And yeah, this
altogether.
is something that we should probably be really paying attention to, because it's definitely gonna, the precedents being set right now will have looming effects in the future.
Right. And when you think about it, in the next 10 to 20 years, there are some islands that will be completely uninhabitable. So if you go to one of those islands, you will be seeing the last generation of people who will actually live in those islands.
Right.
So that is the last generation of people who will be growing up in their home islands. So that's another sad reality that we have to look at.
Well, I also want to talk about that in respect that we're going to be going somewhere else. Right now, we're not really welcome in some places, or our relationship with people in certain places isn't great. Like here in Hawaii, Micronesians in Hawaii, we're having kind of a tough time, especially with healthcare and just the homelessness issue. Oregon is doing really well, but just in the future, this is going to be probably the first place people will be going.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, we need to fix a lot of issues with the state's relationship with Micronesians, because there's going to be a bunch of people here.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hope that people watching out there are kind of thinking about that too.
This is a very sad conversation.
Yes, it is. Well, I think maybe that's a good cue to move on to something a little less serious.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that, folks at home watching. We'll become funnier. Just wait. Our next topic was just a question from one of our TFB members, Axel, just brought up. Do you want to introduce it?
You can if you wish.
Okay. Here from Ax. A poly friend asked me, why are Micronesians short?
It's a good question.
I don't know.
I'm the shortest one here. You guys know.
You're like 6 feet tall.
I don't know. That's the short, quick, and honest answer. I don't know, right? But I think he also mentioned that there is some research out there that proves that some people in different areas are shorter, taller, right? But outside of that talk, I think the bigger discussion is, why is that even a conversation? And should we have to stop looking at the idea or accepting the idea that being tall is equal to being better or being more powerful, or is a positive thing. Growing up with tall people problems at home, like,
oh, tall people problems. Hashtag.
If you look at like growing up as someone who's tall at home, where most people are not that tall, we look at people as bumbling or lanky or clumsy.
I can see that.
Right? And I don't necessarily think that we consider tall people or look at tall people in a positive way. Maybe not so much, because
like the legends and stuff, like the tall giants or whatever.
As far as I know,
like a monster or something, or
yeah.
There's like stories of like was it like Isokalakal? They fought the giants or something.
Right. Yeah. And there's stories from all over the place where giants are actually tall people are actually bad things, right?
Right.
And then we have to overcome tall people,
Like David and Goliath.
right? And also short people or like sokores have also been very magical and good things to our cultures, right? And although we make fun of them, they're actually people who bring a lot of knowledge to us, right? So we have to get rid of that idea that being tall
who
equals...
introduced this idea?
That's a good question. I don't know.
It's another stereotypical thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
It's very possible that was something introduced to us.
was it? Oh, go
No,
ahead.
this was a couple of years ago too. Someone told me about some one of my dad's friends, I guess. He mentioned about how Asian bodies and European bodies are kind of like a result of genetic, differences in how they were raised up and brought up, and their bodies made in a way that's Asian. This is very brief. Like I don't remember 100%, but like Asians' bodies, they tend to have longer torso, so that it also has to do with their diet, where they're more carb heavy,
Right.
so their body is made in a way that they
metabolize
things faster. But with Europeans, they're usually like 70-80% legs and short torso. And there was a study on that part where diets and all that kind really changed the way their body features are the way it is today.
It's good you bring up diet.
Yeah.
Because in the second portion of Axel's question, he asks, is this a result of our diet or is this a result of our genetics?
Well, it's certainly both.
It's certainly both, I think so as well.
Just evolutionary wise, like the question was from his poly friend. Polynesians
Known to be
like a little bigger set. And I think, the Polynesian islands, what are they like geographically?
I don't know.
Like they're a little bigger, like a little more mountainous.
It's true.
And what is their diet mostly? What kind of meats do they eat for protein though? And just stuff like that. Like
You're suggesting they have a more protein-based diet?
I think just like maybe that coupled with just thousands of years of
that.
Back home, like especially the low lying islands, mostly fish, leaner meats.
True.
And a lot of carbs, not carbs, but like breadfruit and stuff like that, or wherever we can get our nutrients. And then just that with thousands of years of eating that, and then just being able to adapt. Like especially the Micronesians have to deal with like diabetes, just because of the way we metabolize all this food. I mean, certainly other countries just our diets shifted so much.
Right. Yeah. There was a quick shift.
Yeah.
And that's what led to our high rates in diabetes and obesity.
It's all that spam, man. And rice.
And maybe with Polynesian islands, they have more higher lands and more land mass compared to Micronesia, where most of our daily routine is done in water, so that could be a huge factor.
There was also a portion of that question or that conversation where he asked, if we start eating local foods, would that result in us getting taller? And I don't think that's the case, as Russell was talking about. Maybe, I don't know, I'm not a scientist, but it may result in us getting more, I don't know, physically stronger, healthier. But taller, I don't know, that's a very specific...
I mean, in this generation, a lot of us are mixed, as you can see here.
Could have just been the boat that made it to Micronesia, just had all the short people in
Probably, yeah.
But just an interesting question. I think what does it matter is the real answer.
Probably, yeah. It's interesting you bring that question came up, because on the surface it's not a very important question, but when you really think about it, it speaks about stereotypes.
Right.
So it's a question that strings from stereotypes. And are Micronesians shorter? Looks like it. I don't know. I don't think there's a statistic on that, but if there is, then probably yes. But so what? What's the point of that?
Yeah.
Yeah, because again, the idea that being tall is a positive thing.
Right.
That's why I'm not saying necessarily that person was trying to put us down, but if someone is shorter, then they'll look down on us literally and figuratively, right? So we have to do away with that notion, that idea.
Like for us, we're in the Pacific Island Studies program. It kind of goes along the whole Western idea of being taller and stuff is better, looking different from everyone else.
There is no superior Nesian race.
Or height.
Good stuff. Is that it for today?
That's all I have to say.
All right. I forgot to.
No, I was gonna just briefly mention that we'll probably put the links in the description box later on. You guys can go ahead and support Nathan Fitch's film Island Soldier. I've seen it. These guys, I guess, haven't, but it's a very good film. It looked like he actually going to expand more on whatever he had, but it's a very good film. Something very different from what we're used to looking at Micronesian soldiers and what they go through as from recruitment to training to actually being in the field. I really enjoy the film, so if you guys could just support Nathan Fitch, and let's see where that goes.
He has a crowdfunding campaign.
Right.
Yeah, it's on Kickstarter, was it?
Yes.
Just a few bucks could go a long way. Just forgot to note at the beginning, the views expressed in this podcast does not necessarily represent TFB's mission. There are our own individual opinions. Please give us your thoughts about them, though. Let us know. Join our discussion next time. We'll have more topics. Suggest a topic.
Yes, send us questions.
We love talking about whatever, and we really like to know your opinion about our views, too. And catch us on our next podcast. So once again, this is Russell Dolag.
Sammy.
You?
We'll catch you guys next time. Thank you.